It began with a moment so sharp, so unexpected, that everyone on Flight 907 would remember it long after the plane had safely landed. The elderly man, frail shoulders, simple clothes, trembling hands clutching a worn leather bag, was standing quietly near the business-class cabin when the flight attendant raised her voice just loud enough for half the aircraft to hear. The humiliation that followed cut through the air like a blade. People watched, some frowned, some looked away, and the elderly man, instead of defending himself, simply lowered his eyes, as if he had experienced this kind of judgment many times before. But no one knew that what was about to unfold would change the meaning of dignity for everyone present that day. If you believe the world needs more kindness, less judgment, and more compassion for those silently fighting their own battles, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring real, meaningful stories to more hearts around the world. The incident began when the elderly man boarded the plane with a business-class boarding pass clenched between his fingers. His hands shook, not from age but from a quiet excitement. This was his first time flying so comfortably. His son had booked the ticket for him as a gift after many years, begging him to finally experience ease after a lifetime of hardship. The man had worked as a mechanic for nearly 5 decades, never once taking a day off unless forced by fever or exhaustion. He had spent his life sending his children to school, repairing broken cars, standing for long hours on greasy floors. Sacrifice was the only language he knew, and luxury was a concept reserved for other people. But today, finally, he was allowing himself one small moment of comfort. However, the flight attendant didn't even look at the boarding pass properly before assuming he had walked into the wrong section. To her, the old clothes and dusty shoes meant only one thing: he was out of place. She snapped at him, dripping with irritation, telling him he did not belong here, and insisting he move back to economy. When he attempted to show the pass, she dismissed it, thinking it was fake or mistaken. The tone she used, the looks passengers exchanged, the quiet chuckles from a few insensitive travelers, each one burned into the man's spirit like marks he had spent a lifetime trying to avoid. He stood frozen, his voice wouldn't rise, the humiliation tied it down. Decades of being poor, being invisible, being spoken over had taught him one thing: sometimes silence was easier than resistance. So he lowered his head. He took a single step back, then another. The passengers around watched, some with pity, some with indifference, but no one moved. No one said a word. It wasn't until a man seated nearby, clean suit, expensive watch, the look of someone used to comfort, noticed the trembling hands of the elderly man and the business-class ticket still visible between his fingers, that something changed. The stranger got up, walked straight to the attendant, and quietly but firmly told her to check the ticket again. At first she resisted, then he insisted, and when she finally scanned the pass, the color drained from her face. The elderly man did belong there. The stranger didn't raise his voice. He didn't embarrass her further. Instead, he turned to the old man and gently guided him back to his seat. But for the old man, the damage had already carved itself deep inside. He sat down slowly, avoiding eye contact with everyone, tears gathering at the corner of his eyes. He tried to hide them, but the stranger noticed. He asked softly if he was all right, but the man just nodded, unable to speak. Once the plane took off, the atmosphere settled, but the guilt began to spread across the cabin. People who had witnessed the scene felt uneasy. Shame has a way of sticking to those who choose silence when they should speak. The attendant approached with an apology, but even that felt hollow, rehearsed, forced. The elderly man simply whispered that it was fine, though his trembling hands told another story entirely. Halfway through the flight, turbulence shook the aircraft lightly, and the elderly man instinctively clutched the armrest. The stranger beside him noticed again. What began as a simple offer of comfort slowly turned into a conversation that softened the man's wounded heart. He spoke quietly about his years as a mechanic, his love for his children, the way he always dreamed of seeing the world beyond roads and garages. The stranger listened with genuine respect, realizing that this man had lived a life far richer in character than many who flew business class every week. Without warning, the captain made an announcement asking all business class passengers to remain seated. Moments later, the cabin crew returned, this time different, more composed, almost reverent. A member of ground staff waiting at the arrival airport had informed the airline that the elderly passenger was actually a retired award-winning national mechanic, honored years ago for saving dozens of lives by preventing a major fuel line explosion in a bus depot. He had never asked for recognition, never used his achievements for attention. He was, in every sense, a silent hero. The moment this revelation swept through the business class cabin, everything shifted. Passengers who had ignored him now looked at him with awe and guilt. The attendant who had insulted him earlier visibly broke into tears. She approached again, this time kneeling beside him, not as an employee, but as a human being seeking forgiveness. The elderly man placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He didn't scold her. He didn't demand respect. His forgiveness was quiet, humble, and profoundly graceful. When the plane landed, a small reception of airport staff waited for him. They greeted him with warmth and dignity, presenting him with flowers, thanking him for his service to the nation. The passengers followed behind, witnessing the moment their assumptions shattered completely. The stranger from the plane stood proudly beside the elderly man, as if guarding his honor. For the first time in a very long time, the elderly man felt seen, not for his clothes, not for his appearance, but for the life he had lived. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that every person has a story worth honoring, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps share powerful human stories with the world. Before you go, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were on that plane? And with that, the story of a humble mechanic, mistaken, insulted, but ultimately honored, comes to an end, leaving behind a powerful reminder: true dignity is never worn on the body, it lives in the soul.